Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear this breaking news that just came out in regards to our reparations. Listen to this. US considers asking Black Americans on census if they are slave descendants. Change would help quantify eligibility for reparations should the government agree to pay them. The US government is considering asking Black Americans on federal forms, including the census, whether their ancestors were enslaved. In a proposed update to how the government tracks Americans' race and ethnicity, the Biden administration is asking the public for input on how it might go about differentiating Black people who are descendants of slaves in America from those whose families arrived more recently as immigrants from sub Saharan Africa, the Caribbean, and other countries. The idea of adding more detailed categories to the census has been gaining currency among some Black Americans who say society too often conflates their experiences with those of Black immigrants who only started moving to the US in meaningful numbers in the past few decades. Roughly 1 in 5 Black people in the US are immigrants or their children, according to an analysis by the nonpartisan Pew Research Center. Supporters of the change say one reason they are pushing it is to quantify who would be eligible to receive reparations for slavery should the government ever agree to pay them. An effort to make such payments as stalled. So, yeah, we know Congress ain't working on this, y'all. You got to be a fool to believe they are. So they're saying efforts to make such payments has stalled in Congress. Through local efforts have gained some steam. In San Francisco, the city board of supervisors are debating a proposal to award eligible Black residents up to $5 million per person in restitution. One of a menu of preliminary this is what they're just talking about. These are the things that are being recommended, including free homes, guaranteed income, and debt and tax relief. Research by the Federal Reserve Bank, okay, said that by researchers at Duke University, among others, show that Black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved tend to lag behind in wealth and education compared with more recent arrivals. Yeah, but America's more inclined to help those Black immigrants than helping us. America sees Black people as a monolithic, said Chad Brown, spokesperson for the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, which backs reparations and is pushing for change. When you say all Black people are the same, you are ignoring the differences in culture, ancestry, economics, and you're doing a disservice to everyone lumped into that group. The potential change is one of several the Biden administration is thinking about adopting to refine how race and ethnicity are measured on government forms, which typically dictate how other institutions collect demographic data. So, the Biden administration has proposed combining such existing race and ethnicity questions so that Hispanic or Latino would no longer be separate. So, you know how they always have Hispanic or Latino on applications? Well, now they're going to have, Black descendant of slave or Black immigrant on applications in the same way. Actually, that should have been done first before anyone else, as far as I'm concerned, but instead would be one of several choices on the race question. It has also proposed creating a new race question category. Americans of Middle Eastern or North African heritage. Unlike those changes, the administration didn't include a formal recommendation about identifying Black Americans' ancestry, but rather solicited comments from the public on how it might do so. Supporters of the change want an additional question: should a respondent select Black or African American on a government form where they could indicate that their ancestors were slaved? It is proposed rule on those border changes. The administration asked whether the term American descendants of slavery or American freedmen would be the best terms to describe the group. Some have suggested term foundational Black Americans. Wow, you think they're paying attention to the internet and what people are saying on social media? See, this just goes to show you when you believe they're not paying attention and when they blatantly try to go above and beyond to ignore us. To me, this is how I always see it. The harder they try to ignore us, the more they're actually paying attention. Always remember that. The White House Office of Management and Budget, which is spearheading the race category overhaul, declined to comment on the idea. Last year, California became the first state to require that Black state employees be allowed to specify that they are African American descendants of persons enslaved in the United States on employment forms. The law, which takes effect next year, would allow self identifying um, Black immigrants from Africa and the Caribbeans and required the statistics be published each year. A working group in California, which is drafting the reparations proposal, the state legislature to study is looking at partnerships with genealogy websites, including 23andMe and Ancestry.com, to potentially help verify a Black person's lineage should she or he apply to receive reparations. Well, that's a good thing because I know who the slaves are in my family on both sides, both my mother and father's side. The census and other federal survey rely on respondents' self-reported descriptions and typically don't ask for verification. Mike Gonzalez, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative Washington think tank, said subdividing the Black population in the United States is a harmful step that would further divide the American society. Now, what the hell is Mike Gonzalez talking about when they already do that for his group? Okay, they already do that for his group on application. So you need to have a seat, buddy. Nobody's listening to that. Government shouldn't be in the business of separating people. Well, the government in this country has done nothing but separate people for centuries. So you're a day late and buck short on that comment, Mike Gonzalez. So let's get on beyond Mike Gonzalez and his BS. So if slavery related change were adopted, it wouldn't only be used on the census, but also on forms that Americans counter on a more routine basis, such as applications for federal student loans and home loans. So far, thousands of members of the public have left comments on the proposed race category overhaul. Mike Hicks, an administrator at a historically Black college in Louisville, Kentucky, recently logged into a government site and typed up a 400-word comment in favor for the change for Black respondents. So, I mean, look, to me, it's not a bad idea. It's good to have a breakdown of who are the actual descendants of slaves and who are not. And to be honest with you, if you intend on getting reparations, then this process would have to be done. It would have to be done. So Hicks said he became interested in supporting politicians who directly represented the interests of slavery descendants after becoming disillusioned with the former president Barack Obama. During Mr. Obama's presidency, Mr. Hicks said many Black Americans felt left behind as their neighborhoods gentrified and their incomes couldn't keep pace. According to surveys conducted by the Federal Reserve, Black families' wealth is less than 15% of white families' wealth and lower than any racial group. His election and presidency was landmarked, but it didn't help most Black Americans except symbolically, he said. Mr. Hicks and other supporters of this designation have pointed out that Mr. Obama isn't a descendant from slaves, and his father was an international student from Kenya, his mother white. If America wants resources to go to the populations that need them the most, we must accurately recognize who is affected and why, Mr. Hicks wrote in his comment in support of a new category. The government's proposal comes in the midst of a broader debate among Black Americans over how much experience the descendants of people enslaved in the US share with those whose families came to America voluntarily. There is no comparison, y'all. There's no comparison at all. Many Black immigrants say they face much of the same discrimination, particularly at the hands of the police. Black people from Africa were also brought to the Caribbean and Latin American, as slaves, and they were. They were. But see, the thing is, it's up to their governments to fight that battle for reparations and challenge these governments in the Caribbean and in Latin America for their reparations. That's really not for us to take on. We can only fight on the soil that our people were enslaved, our forefathers were enslaved. So taking on that, then we're taking on a lot of fight beyond the United States. And I really don't think we should be focusing on that. Shoot, we gonna have to deal with one battle at a time. But many of those who ancestors were enslaved in the US believe they should be considered a distinct ethnic group. That belief is based, at least in part, on limited data shows that Black immigrants and their children, on average, find higher paying jobs and accumulate more wealth than those families who lived here for decades or centuries. And that's a disgrace. That's a disgrace. And that just goes to show you America hates us so much. They will put any immigrant that steps on this soil ahead of us. That's all that is proof of. Several studies suggest that Black immigrants overrepresented on elite college campuses and have immigrated from the African continent because the Black population isn't systematically categorized along such lines. Research on these outcomes is limited. So many of the immigrants that come over here from the Caribbean and Africa, they actually get ahead of us over time. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. There's still a lot we don't know, and it would be easier to start knowing those things if we could better document the Black population. Camille Z. Charles, professor of sociology Africana Studies at the University of Pennsylvania, who has researched Black student populations at elite schools and support more detailed data collection. Yes, yes. And believe me, they get far more help than we do coming over here as immigrants. And yeah, they face discrimination because America is just a racist country and it always will be one. But you had a choice to whether you wanted to be here or not. But I do believe if Africans can trace their ancestry to people in the Caribbean and in Latin America where you believe your people went, then yes, I think you should fight those battles for your reparations. I think no matter who you are in this world, if you know where your ancestry lies and your people were enslaved, I absolutely strongly believe you should fight for those reparations. But we're not in a position to fight for everybody, y'all. That's how I see it. You may disagree with me. But y'all, please tell me what you think about this story. Because, no matter how you look at it, in order for us to get paid out for reparations, they would have to gather this kind of information. It is impossible for them not to do it. But y'all tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.